Hello and welcome to another Maya tutorial. Today I will be covering Maya's interface as well as the Hotbox overlay. If you're new to Maya, you might be overwhelmed by the number of tools and options and slider bars and all kinds of things that are just popped up around the screen. Today I'm going to cover what each of those bars is named, as well as an easy way to turn them on and off. The first bar that I'm going to cover is called the status line. That's this top bar right here, right underneath all of your normal menus. The reason why I'm going to cover this one first, aside from it just being at the top, is because it's probably going to be one of the most used bars that you will use in Maya. The reason for that is this one little box right here. When you click on it, you're going to see a listing of different types of menus. This is your menu set selector. So from the top, you have animation, polygon, surfaces, dynamics, rendering, in dynamics, and customize. Each of these, when you click on them, changes what your menus are up at the top. So as I keep clicking through, you notice that the menus change for each one, hence the name menu sets. So this is probably going to be the number one most used bar, and this is called your status line. Looking over towards the right on the status line, you're going to notice that there's just a ton of different icons. Now in this tutorial, I'm not going to cover what each one does, but I will show you how you can hide and show different parts of this bar. So you'll notice that each section is divided up with these little dividers popping up in between each one. If it has a little triangle next to it, it means that it's hiding something and that you can click on it and it'll show more. If it has a little single line on it, that means that you can collapse it down and hide it. So if I want to free up a little bit of space on here, I can come over and I can click on each of these lines and it will hide each of those sections. So I can collapse down the entire thing if I don't want to see anything other than my menu set. Firstly, if I click on this little arrow right here, you can come through and you can expand every single one of these menu sections. Now for me, I have a big screen, so it doesn't really take up that much space, but let's say you were working on a smaller screen and a lot of this information was being cut off. What you could do is, let's say you don't really need the save button, so you could hide your save button. Let's say you don't really use this thing, so you can hide that. If you don't know what any of these are and you don't bother using them, you can hide those, and then suddenly you have enough room to actually show what you want to be shown on here. So I'm going to leave those expanded, and I'm going to close this one. That's what Maya defaults to. On to our next one. Our next one is called your shelf. Now your shelf is similar to having your different menus up here, but it displays things as icons. So in here, you're going to have a different section or a different listing of tools for the different functions and features that you have in Maya. Now these are nice because you can save your own custom Mel script codes, and I will go over what that is in a later episode, but it's pretty much the Maya embedded language. So it allows you to write your own tools, essentially, or write a function for your own tools. Each of those can be docked down here and given an icon. So these are really nice if you want to have quick access to different tools and different features. I personally find it to be quite a bit bulky, and most of the things that I do in Maya, I don't have a special tool to use, so I don't really use this shelf slider very much. But it is handy, especially if you do your own custom. You can have a custom tab and you can put your own tools that you've made up here in the shelf. The next, looking over on the left, is your toolbox. Now, your toolbox, once you start getting used to Maya, becomes pretty obsolete pretty fast. It just takes up screen space over on the side. But when you're first starting to use Maya, it is really nice to be able to have quick access to each of your tools. So Over here on the side, you have your select tool, your lasso tool, your paint selection tool, move tool, rotate tool, and scale tool. Directly below that, you also have different panel layouts. I will cover panel layouts a little bit later, but they're pretty much just a saved view for your camera angles. So if you want like a top perspective, a side, a front, a left, right, bottom, all those have different things, as well as some other specialty views. And I'll cover all that in a later episode. Moving on to the last 4 bars at the bottom. These are kind of related to animation. You're not really going to use these too much in modeling. But the top one right here is called your time slider. So this allows you to see any keyframes that you have set for any animation that you're doing. Once again, I will cover this in another episode, but this is just the bar that you see. It'll have a little red tick next to it, and it's just showing that you have some kind of keyframe set on that frame. It's also where you have control over your animation, so if you want to play it forward, play it backwards, skip to the front, skip to the back, go to the next keyframe or the back keyframe, all that is controlled on your time slider. The bar directly below that is called your range slider. Now this is pretty much ties in with your time slider. There's no reason whatsoever to have a range slider without your time slider visible. Because what the range slider does is, if you notice right over here on this, it says that it starts at number 1 and it goes to number 24. And now if we look back up here on our time slider, you can see that it starts at frame 1 and ends at frame 24. So what the range slider does is it kind of isolates this top time slider and shows only what frames you have visible. So right now, if I look over here, you can see that it says 48. That means in our timeline right now, we are going from frame 1 all the way to frame 48. But we're only showing frames 1 through 24. So if I move my mouse over to this gray bar, I can actually click and hold, and I can drag that from left to right. And you can see that it now dynamically updates and changes what frames are visible. So now I'm only showing frame 25 through frame 48. At the beginning and end of this light gray bar, you will see a little square. If you click and hold on that and drag, you can see that you're now increasing or decreasing how many frames are in view. So if you want to show the whole entire time bar or time slider, you just drag all the way over to 1 and drag the other all the way to over to 48. Or you can simply go into this box and type in what frame range you want to start and what frame range you want to end. Once again, both the time slider and range slider are really only used in animation. The next line down is called your command line. Now, the reason why it's called your command line is because that's where you can type in Mel scripting, Maya embedded language, and it'll display the results over here in the black side, or anything that you do from a menu, it will show you the Maya command that it used to make and do that command. There's really only 2 sections. You have the input code section and you have the display code section. Now, over on the far right hand side, you will see a button for your script editor, and if you click on that, it will open up your entire script editor. Down in this bottom window, it will show you the last commands used, and I will go over Mel scripting at a later date. So moving on to the last bar is your help line. Now your help line, in the beginning, it's actually quite useful because it shows you what you're doing wrong and kind of suggests ways to do something that you're supposed to correctly. Once you start getting used to Maya and you know what a lot of the tools do, this isn't so important, so most of the time I have this hidden as well. And for the very last thing, over on the right hand side, you have your channel box and attribute editor. They both kind of stack on the same spot, and you can actually toggle between them by these tabs over on the side. If I click the bottom tab, that is my attribute editor, and if I click the top tab, it is my channel box. And you can also tell that by the names at the very top. Each of these has its own purpose. The channel box is pretty much the attribute editor, but kind of like a stripped down version of it, and it just lists all the commands. The channel box, the attribute editor kind of has, when you have more things in your scene, will have a tab across the top, and it just has all the information. So it's kind of a very full, robust version of the channel box. Alright, now that we covered what each of these different lines and sliders and menu sets and everything are called and what they do, I'm going to show you how to turn them on and off. Now, I already have my UI elements window kind of pulled off to the side just so you guys can see what each thing is called. But to get to this, if you don't already know where it's at, I'm going to go ahead and close that. All we have to do is come up to Display, UI Elements, and then you have all of your options here. Now, how I got that free floating window, and this is true for any menu in Maya, you'll see a dotted line across the top of every single menu. If you click on that, it will actually pull out that menu and put it into a free floating window. Now, this is really handy if you have multiple monitors, because you can just go ahead and pull out the menus that you use all the time, such as like Edit Mesh or the Mesh menu, and you can just pull those out. That way it's always open and you don't always have to keep going back up and clicking on the menu and then whatever you need to click on. So it just makes things a little bit easier. Same with if I wanted to turn something on or off, rather than going all the way up to Display, UI Elements, and then clicking something and it goes away, and then having to go back in and do that every single time. With the menu pulled off to the side, it's very easy for me just to go down the list and turn off whatever I want and whatever I don't want. So pretty much just as I just demonstrated, over on the side you're going to see all these little check boxes, and if I click on each one, it will either hide or show whatever menu that you want. Now, this is nice because you can specify exactly what you want. So let's say you want absolutely everything off except for your status line and your command line. It's very easy to come in here and just toggle off all the extra stuff that you're not going to be using. And suddenly you have a lot more screen space to actually model and do everything with. Now, you can even go one step further and you can hide absolutely everything if you want, but I find that even when I'm modeling, it's sometimes easier because I will switch between a few menu sets to be able to switch through those pretty quickly. The other thing is for the command line, I do find that a lot of the time I will use some kind of Mel script code, and it is so much easier just to have that active and I can come down here and type it in rather than going through the menus to get to the script editor. So for me, I prefer to leave the status line on and the command line on when I model. Turning everything back on, another quick way if you want to toggle between all of your menus and no menus at all is if you press the Control and then the space bar, it will actually hide everything on screen. So it will hide all of your user interface elements and just give you a big open working space. Now, this is nice if you have, if you like working with a lot of menus but you don't always want to have them active. You can just press Control Space and it toggles between them all on and them all off. Now, the other thing to note about this is that I can also come back into my UI elements, and I can turn off everything that I'm not going to be using. And now I have all of my user elements off that I don't normally use, but I can still press the Control Space and notice that even when I toggle them on and off, it's only getting rid of what is left and toggled off. So it's a great way to customize your view to match how you are going to be using Maya and what you want to do with it. For me, this is exactly how I have my screen and all of my user interface stuff set up normally, where I only have just this bar and this bar down at the bottom, along with my channel box to the side. Moving on, let's say you actually have nothing on whatsoever. A lot of people do end up working like this because there is another way that you can access all of your menu items and not even need to go up and switch between your different menu sets. And that is with your Hotbox. How you access the Hotbox overlay is simply by having your mouse inside whatever view that you have. So in my case right now it's the perspective, and just hold down the space bar. By doing so, you're going to get access to every single menu that Maya has. This is pretty much what your top bar up here would look like if you had all of your user menu sets active all at once. And that is the Hotbox. So you'll notice that you have all of the defaults: file, edit, modify, create, display, yada yada. But you also have all of your views. So this is inside your specific view. You have your animation menu set, you have your polygon menu set, you have your NURBS menu set, you have your dynamics menu set, you have your lighting menu set, and you have your particle menu set. All of these things are visible all quickly at just the press of the space bar. So let's say I needed to get to my edit mesh menu set. All I have to do is hold down the space, come over here to edit mesh. I just click and hold on that, and then I just let go on whatever tool that I want. Also, it does allow you to, once again, click on this top bar, which will pull out a menu for it. So it's just a really fast way to access all the different menus. The next thing to know about the Hotbox control is that it has target zones. So if you notice, there's these little white lines that are kind of stretching out in an X shape. Well, each of these sides, these quadrants, has their own hidden menu in them. Starting with the very top, so in between each of these lines, if I click and hold, you can see that a menu will pop up, and this is your layout editor. So if you remember when we had our toolbar on, we had all those different layouts pre-saved over here on the side. All those menus are accessed in your Hotbox by just clicking somewhere in the top lines. Now it doesn't matter where. I can click all the way up here and they still show up. I can click over here and they show up. I can even click all the way in between each of these menus and they show up. The only thing is that it is an X. So kind of starting from the central Maya box all the way down, it kind of just forms one big triangle all the way up. So as long as I click in that triangle, that menu will pop up. Over on the right hand side, it pops up with just a few more options, such as on this one is your user interface. So if quickly you want to turn something on or off, such as our time slider, you can just click over there and turn it on or turn it off. So it's just another quick, fast way. Instead of going into display, UI elements, and turning them on that way, it's just really quick to come over here and say, I need my status line. And then you pop up with your status line. Going to the bottom, we have our different editors. So in later episodes, I will cover what a lot of these do. But it's just really fast to be able to get to your different editors, such as your outliner, render view, hypershade, dynamic relationships, hypergraph, dope sheet, graph editor, and your sets. Clicking on each one kind of just takes your entire window over to that. If you ever accidentally select something and you want to go back, if you hold down space, you'll notice that there is one more box that I forgot to mention, which is the Maya box. And if I click and hold on that, this is your different camera views that you have for Maya. So what we were in before was our perspective view. So if you accidentally open up a window and it takes over your whole screen, it's really easy just to hold down space, click and hold the central Maya button, and then select whatever view that you want. In our case was perspective. And lastly, over on the left hand side, it opens up yet again another menu set, and I will cover what some of these are in another episode. Truth be told, in the years that I have been using Maya, I don't think I have ever actually used this section over here on the side, but if it's something that you guys are interested in, I will definitely make a video on what these things do and how to use them. And there you have it. You have seen all of Maya's user interface components as well as the Hotbox. Thank you for watching, and if you liked what you saw, please subscribe to my YouTube channel.